Sharon Hewitt is a state senator, a Republican from, oh my goodness, St. Tammany, Orleans, Plaquemines, and St. Bernard parishes. That is her district. Miss Sharon, is this the largest Senate district in the state, or is it sort of just like the Texarkana of districts? How exactly does that work out?
It is one of the largest geographically, for sure, because I go from the Mississippi state line all the way down to the mouth of the Mississippi River. I live in Slidell.
Sharon, let me ask you this. You were in the hearing, you were questioning the governor about the cuts, and he made a remark that women, it just makes the skin on my arms and legs crawl. He said something to you when you were asking him about the cuts, and he said, I can explain it to you, but I can't make you understand it. Is that quote accurate?
I think he said, I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you.
And did you infer at the end of that, little lady, like I do?
A lot of women have found that insulting. Of course, I said, sir, that is insulting. Immediately when he said that, I believe everyone would be insulted by that comment. It's very disrespectful. It implies that the problem is not his ability to explain it, that the problem lies in that the person can't understand it. And I understand the budget pretty well. As an executive in the oil and gas business, I manage billions of dollars in budgets and hundreds of employees. I understand the budget. And I believe that what he was saying was very misleading and misrepresented the budget.
We want to get
the way
to
I look at the budget.
We want to get to that, but when you told him that was disrespectful, what was his response?
Well, I think as soon as he said it, he realized that perhaps that was inappropriate, and he was trying to kind of roll the words back into his mouth. But he's not apologized. And I think what we've learned is the $600 million cuts that he said were there and he had in his office really aren't things that any of the rest of us would consider cuts, and they're very much misrepresented the data.
Sort of in John Bel's defense, do you think he said that to you because you're a female, because you're a Republican, or a little of both?
It could be anything. I mean, I guess you'd have to ask him why he said that.
Mm-hmm. The $600 million in cuts. Many across the state are confused. Some of the cuts are deferred. Some of them are one-time. Were there $600 million in cuts?
Absolutely not. Those things, as you said, many of them were double counted. Many of them were deferred. Here's what I look at, and this was the basis of my question. I believe most people in Louisiana would look at it this way. What are we spending today compared to what did we spend last year, and what did we spend the year before that? And the governor claimed that over that 2-year period that he had reduced spending in state general fund by $600 million. So let's look at the bottom line. When he took office, our budget was $8.7 billion. His first year, this is state general fund. His first year, we raised the budget to $9.1 billion. The second year, his budget was $9.4 billion. And if we replace all the revenue as he's asking us to do right now, the budget will increase to $9.7 billion.
The biggest general fund budget. That's the biggest general fund budget in the history of the state. Is that accurate?
I think that's accurate. And it's increased $1 billion, Erin, over the time period that he's been elected. So where is a $600 million cut? I don't think anybody in Louisiana really believes that.
Ms. Sharon, the governor has now called for a special session. There are those who will speculate that the reason he called the session is because he and legislators are maybe on the verge of a deal. Have you heard anything? Is there anything to that? What do you expect the result of this session to be?
Well, I think that's kind of interesting. I mean, he drew a line in the sand maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times and said, we have to have a deal by this date. Oh, let me change the date. We have to have a deal by that date. And I don't think there's any deal at all. At least I certainly haven't seen an announcement from House Republican leadership to that effect. So He put a number of things in the call. I think he really wants to have a special session. I find that very problematic because I believe that you have to look at your expenses. First of all, we don't know what the real numbers are. So you need to understand what the numbers are. You need to be able to look at the expenses, and I need to be able to tell taxpayers that I am positive that we're spending your dollars as efficiently as possible before I ask you to give me another dollar out of your pocket and put it in the state's pocket. And I don't think we're at that point yet.
Talking to Senator Sharon Hewitt from the Covington, Slidell area. Let me ask you, if your magic wand, what's your answer to this? Do we keep the penny on the books? Can we find more cuts to take care of our budget issues?
Well, we can absolutely find more cuts, and I'll tell you what gives me hope for that is G&O Inc. They're in the greater New Orleans area, kind of an economic development group, and they have done a report. This is the second year they've published it, and what it does is it compares Louisiana's spending per capita to the other southern states, and we are always high. We are in the high end. We are way above average, and that tells me that there are things that other states are doing that we could be doing differently or better. And then, let's look at our results. Our results aren't very good either on any scorecard. So when you have poor spending habits and poor results, I think if I was the CEO of the state, I would be looking at those numbers and trying to understand why.
We had last hour Stephen Weigesback from the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry on, and he said regarding the special session, it was going to be interesting to see who would be the driving force, who would take charge of this session. And I asked Mr. Stephen, I said, in a Republican-dominated legislature, why don't the Republicans take charge of the session? Do you anticipate that will happen?
Well, I don't really, because I think that those who think that the answer is taxes need to be the ones to take the lead. And I think that, again, we're putting the cart before the horse. We need to hear from the agencies. We need to understand why they should be able to justify or why they're asking for the funding that they're asking for. And we haven't had that opportunity yet. And so I think it's going to be very difficult. We don't even really know what the real revenue gap is. So, the basis of all of this is assuming that we currently have the right size of government.
Can you do that in 3 weeks? Can you get to the bottom of all this in 3 weeks?
No, that is exactly why the special session is a waste of time, because the session is going to be focused on revenue, and we're not going to have the testimony from the agencies to talk about expenses until we go into the regular session.